He constructed a vast empire worth billions, never glancing back, until one evening when he noticed three boys cleaning his office windows, and it struck him that they bore an uncanny resemblance to himself. Nicholas Rains had never made the journey home on foot before. Not quite. On most days, his chauffeur lingered at the side entrance of his glass-walled domain, the engine purring, the back seat warmed, and an agenda already illuminated on the display. Yet that evening, an unseen force beckoned him to the sidewalk. Perhaps it was the weight of the day, unending meetings, fraught investor calls, and a legal struggle he was too weary to feign interest in any longer. Or perhaps it was the peculiar discomfort in his chest that had eluded definition for weeks. The streets surrounding his downtown tower buzzed with energy, yet for once, Nicholas refrained from glancing at his phone. He strolled with his hands tucked into his coat pockets, allowing the crisp air to nip at his cheeks. The silence enveloped him, a stillness he typically steered clear of. As he arrived at the far side of his building, a sudden flicker of motion beyond the glass drew his attention. He took a moment to stop. There, teetering unsteadily on a makeshift scaffold outside the second-story windows, were three diminutive figures clad in matching jackets and wool caps. They hurriedly went about their task, one erasing a smudge while the other two clutched a bottle of cleaner and a bucket of water that swayed with every movement. He nearly continued on his way, but then one of the boys glanced toward the street, and the glow from the lamp post illuminated his face. Nicholas froze in place. The young lad possessed his gaze. Not merely the same hue, but also the same form, the same precision in the angles when he narrowed his eyes. Then the second boy cast his gaze downward. Identical chin, that same twisted little grin. The third let a rag slip from his grasp, and as he descended to pick it up, Nicholas caught a complete view of him, and it felt as though he was gazing into a reflection from a past existence. He remained still. For an extended moment, he remained motionless, his mind racing to comprehend the scene before him. Three boys, barely 6 years old, collaborating with surprising skill, cleaning windows far beyond their reach, dressed in clothes too light for the chilly season. Yet it wasn't the effort that left him in awe. Their expressions were striking. They resembled him, not in an ambiguous, well-known manner, not in a way that could be dismissed as mere coincidence. These boys possessed his jawline, his dimples, his deep blue eyes. There was a shared tilt of their heads, a familiar restlessness in their hands. He was unfamiliar with them, had never laid eyes on them prior. Yet his whole being responded to their presence as if it acknowledged something primordial and hidden deep within. He moved in closer. "Hey," he exclaimed. "What is the location of your parents?" The tallest of the three boys turned to him, eyes narrowed, and responded without a moment's pause. "There are none available." His voice remained unwavering. He remained unyielding. He chose not to seek assistance. He stated it matter-of-factly, as if it were an undeniable truth that required no compassion. Nicholas paused, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. "What is your age?" "6," said the tiniest one, who had scrambled back up with the cloth. "Are you employed here?" "We provide cleaning services. At times, individuals do make payments." Nicholas dragged his hand across his face. This was serious business. This is reality. The children were genuine, and here they were, on their own, cleaning the windows of a building that carried his name. "Do you know who owns this building?" he inquired, already confident in his response. "No," the tallest replied, nonchalantly shrugging his shoulders. "It's of no consequence. We take care of the exterior." Nicholas found himself frozen, grappling with uncertainty about his next move. He had finalized international agreements in a shorter span than the duration of this very conversation. With just a signature, he had the power to acquire entire companies. Yet in that instant, facing three children who resembled fragments of his younger self, he found himself uncertain about what would unfold next. He understood that turning his back was simply not an option. Nicholas lay awake throughout the night. Once the boys vanished into the shadows, their buckets and rags casually draped over their shoulders as if it were the most ordinary sight, he found himself standing solitary before the glass tower that bore his name. An indescribable sensation washed over him, a strange tightness in his chest, a fissure emerging in the protective shell he had meticulously crafted over the years. He posed a few additional inquiries before their departure, yet the responses were succinct and cautious. They mentioned they lived close by, that they were employed in a place where voices were calm, and that their mother used to assist them until her illness made it difficult for her to rise. That was everything. They expressed their gratitude for the sandwich he had offered and strolled away down the street, treating him like just another passerby who wouldn't pursue them. And he did not. Not at that time. He released them, caught in a moment of uncertainty, unsure of any other course of action. However, the following morning, his initial call wasn't directed to his assistant. It wasn't about legal matters, finance, or anyone anticipating his finalization of an acquisition. He reached out to a private investigator he had relied on in the past, known for being both discreet and efficient. He provided a description, approximate ages, but no names. 3 6-year-old boys, identical in appearance, wandering alone, last spotted cleaning windows under the cover of night. He failed to clarify the reason behind his request for the information. He simply stated that it was urgent. As he waited, Nicholas endeavored to concentrate. He participated in a video call with his board, responding with nods at all the appropriate moments. He endorsed a budget proposal without having reviewed it. Yet throughout it all, their faces lingered just beyond his consciousness, akin to a recollection he had yet to deserve. By noon, he had achieved results. They were known as Leo, Lucas, and Logan Sloan. At the age of 6, threefold. No father is indicated on the birth certificates. Mother, Hannah Sloan. The name struck him with the force of a blow to the gut. It had been ages since he last heard it. Hannah was the sole woman he had ever genuinely permitted to enter the confines of his meticulously organized existence. Her warmth, steadiness, and patience disarmed him in ways he hadn't anticipated. They had been together for 2 years while he was still climbing the ranks in the tech industry, before his name appeared in magazines and was spoken of in investment circles. She had always accepted what he offered, never sought the intimacy he wasn't prepared to provide. Yet one day she vanished. Farewell is not in the cards. No note, only quietude. Initially, he had scoured everywhere, making calls, checking hospitals and airports, yet found nothing. Ultimately, as he often did with matters beyond his grasp, he concealed it and pressed on. At last, her name had come back into the spotlight, and it arrived with 3 little boys who bore a striking resemblance to him. He shut the office door behind him and took a seat, his hands firmly clasped together in front of him. He sought every detail the investigator could uncover. School records, hospital files, anything that might shed light on how Hannah had vanished from his life, only to resurface as children he had never known were there. The subsequent email came through in under an hour. Hannah had departed this world 6 months ago due to leukemia. She was without family, without a will, and had only one emergency contact, a woman named Margaret. Margaret volunteered at a community shelter and had been looking after the boys ever since. Nicholas gazed intently at the file, his heart racing with anticipation. His offspring, his real sons, at the age of 6, residing in a shelter, washing windows under the cover of darkness, completely unaware of his identity, unaware that he had been living and toiling just a few floors above them. He rose from his seat and exited the office in silence. He navigated the city streets with urgency, hardly pausing for the traffic signals. The shelter stood modest and weathered, nestled between a laundromat and a vacant lot. Within the room, Margaret occupied a desk, her hands deftly working on a pale blue knitting project. As he shared his name, her face transformed, moving through confusion, then clarity, and finally settling into a profound sorrow. "I was curious when you would finally arrive," she remarked. Nicholas found himself at a loss for words. He remained rigid, as though the slightest hint of tardiness might draw accusations. Margaret said, rising slowly, "She left something for you, a correspondence. She was uncertain whether you would ever discover them. Yet, she held on to hope." She presented him with a sealed envelope, his name inscribed in Hannah's recognizable script. Nicholas refrained from opening it. Not at this moment. He was unable to. He slipped it into his coat pocket and posed the sole question that came to mind. What are they up to these days? Margaret gestured toward the rear. Education at this moment. However, they will return later this afternoon. Nicholas surveyed the cramped room, noting the peeling paint and the racks filled with second-hand garments, and he was struck by the heaviness of all that had slipped through his fingers. He settled in to bide his time. Nicholas remained seated in the chair tucked away in the corner of the shelter for nearly an hour. He remained still, not glancing at his phone, nor reaching for the envelope tucked away in his pocket, despite the sensation that it was searing through the material. His hands were tightly clasped, resting on his knee, as if the act of remaining still could somehow contain the torrent of thoughts spiraling through his mind. He dedicated years to managing every aspect, perfecting each detail of his existence and enterprise. Yet, this was a level of chaos he had never anticipated. Not just one son, but 3 in total. Neither a scandal nor an accident, but a truth that had been quietly existing just miles from his office, as he gazed through glass windows at emptiness. As the door creaked open, the boys stepped inside, backpacks hanging from their small shoulders and dirt smudged on their shoes. Nicholas found himself standing before he could even process the moment. He wasn't noticed immediately. They were caught up in a heated debate about who had triumphed in a race on their way back from school. Their laughter resonated in the front room, vibrant and unrestrained, and for a fleeting moment, he stood still, captivated by their sheer vitality. Lucas was the first to spot him. He paused mid-sentence, his gaze meeting Nicholas's in a lingering, hesitant look. The other 2 turned to see what he was looking at, and in an instant all 3 boys formed a line, resembling soldiers uncertain of the figure that loomed before them. Margaret entered with a soft grace. "Gentlemen, this is Mr. Rains," she spoke softly. "He is a friend of your mother." Nicholas took a deep breath, pushing the words from his throat. "Hello. Our paths crossed the other evening just outside my office building." He hesitated, searching for the right words to convey his thoughts without causing any distress. "I was acquainted with your mother. Once upon a time." Leo, ever the vocal one, inclined his head just a touch. "You were the person with the sandwich." Nicholas gave a slight nod. "Indeed, that was I." They approached him slowly. They remained expressionless. They observed him intently, sensing that there was something significant about him, yet still deliberating on whether he was worthy of their trust. The atmosphere was thick with unvoiced realities, and for the first time, Nicholas allowed the moment to unfold without his usual grip on it. He gently brought himself down to their level and said softly, "I believe there's much I need to clarify. I want to ensure it's done properly, if that works for you." Lucas folded his arms across his chest. "What is the reason for this moment?" It wasn't impolite. It was sincere. Nicholas valued that beyond words. He let out a slow breath. "Due to my lack of knowledge. I was unaware of your existence, and I ought to have." The brothers shared a look, one that only siblings who understood each other's minds could convey. It was Leo who finally remarked, "You resemble us." Nicholas beamed for the first time in days. "I observed that as well." They consented to spend some time with him. Margaret served them cocoa, while Nicholas remained silent initially, allowing the boys to take the lead. They shared stories of their favorite teacher, of a neighborhood cat they weren't meant to feed but did regardless, and of the times they watched their mom paint while she still had the strength to hold a brush. As soon as her name was uttered, a tightness gripped Nicholas from within. He delved into his coat and retrieved the letter. He spoke gently, "I haven't read this yet. It's a message from your mother. It was left for me by her. Is it all right if I open it now?" They remained silent, yet none of them expressed dissent. Nicholas carefully opened the letter, his fingers shaking with anticipation. The script was immediately recognizable, flowing and graceful, adorned with delicate loops at the base of select characters. As he started to read, a constriction formed in his throat. "Nicholas, if you're holding this in your hands, it means the boys have managed to reach you in some unexpected way." Or perhaps you discovered your path to them. I always had faith that you would, in due time. I refrained from sharing because I was fearful not of you, but of the impact your world could have on them. You were constantly striving for something beyond, and I didn't wish to be the one to hold you back. I believed I could manage their upbringing on my own, and I continued until I reached my limit. They possess great intelligence. Fearless, very much akin to you. Kindly stay with me. This isn't the moment. Hannah. He carefully folded the letter, placing his hand over his heart as though it could prevent the pieces from shattering. The boys remained silent about its contents. In some way, it was unnecessary for them to do so. Nicholas glanced at them and remarked, "Your mom was right. Your courage is commendable and clever. I deeply regret not being there earlier." In that fleeting instant, they all stood still. Logan, the most reserved of the trio, settled onto the couch next to him and nestled into his arm, silent as ever. The other two trailed behind, neither embracing nor weeping, simply sitting in proximity. It wasn't acknowledgement, not at this moment, yet it marked the start of something new. A twist that caught Nicholas completely off guard. One he realized he could never leave behind again. Nicholas navigated through uncharted landscapes in the week that followed. Every morning, rather than going straight to his office, he made his way to the shelter. Initially, he arrived equipped with various items: fresh attire, essential educational tools, and meals sourced from familiar, reputable restaurants that prioritized cleanliness and organic ingredients. It was his intuition, the sole method he had ever known to express affection, to support, to mend, to offer until every issue had been resolved. However, the boys had no desire for perfection. They were indifferent to whether the backpacks sported logos or the meals included microgreens. They were concerned about whether he took a seat during meals, if he paid attention during their debates about superheroes, and if he recalled who enjoyed ketchup and who preferred to skip it. Nicholas came to understand that these seemingly insignificant details, often brushed aside, held the greatest importance. Leo posed the greatest challenge to him. He posed direct inquiries, consistently the one to articulate what others were contemplating but hesitant to voice. He was curious about why Nicholas had never attempted to seek them out before, why he had been unaware of Hannah's illness, and why he hadn't even bothered to send a birthday card. Nicholas lacked clear responses. He spoke honestly, admitting that he was unaware. He would have approached everything in an entirely different manner had he been given the chance. He expressed his regret, not the practiced sort of apology, but the deep, resonant kind that weighed heavily in his chest, like a burden long past due. Lucas was filled with curiosity rather than doubt. He inquired about Nicholas's writing, his vehicle, his living space. He sought to uncover the identity of this man who bore a resemblance to them, carrying with him a subtle scent of luxurious soap and coffee. He pushed limits with his inquiries and playful humor, while Nicholas joined in, gradually discovering how to connect in a realm that didn't depend on charts or budget projections. Logan remained silent for days on end. He observed, perpetually observing. As the others engaged in conversation, he remained silent, hands neatly folded, his gaze shifting between them and Nicholas, as if he were gathering insights invisible to everyone else. Logan was the one who caught Nicholas off guard the most. On the fourth day, as Nicholas arrived slightly behind schedule, Logan approached him and affixed a sticker to his lapel. A crumpled, half-peeled superhero. He offered no explanation. I simply pressed it and then walked away. Nicholas chose to leave it as is, even with his meeting approaching later that afternoon. It clung to his jacket like a symbol of something much deeper than mere approval, a nascent trust. He initiated the official journey to secure custody, yet it proved to be quite complex. Hannah had not prepared a legal will, and Nicholas's name was absent from the birth certificates. Despite the advancements in DNA testing, he was required to demonstrate emotional intent and establish a stable environment that would cater to the boy's needs. It was frustrating that every piece online continued to depict him as an unapproachable billionaire, a figure recognized for his wealth rather than his role as a parent. The caseworker assigned to them approached the situation with a sense of caution, bordering on skepticism. She had 2 meetings with Nicholas, during which she posed challenging inquiries regarding his way of life, his availability, and his past experiences with the boys. When she inquired why he believed he could assume the role of their father now, Nicholas refrained from mentioning finances, residences, or prospective education. He stated, "As I observe them, I've come to realize that all my past achievements pale in comparison if I let this opportunity slip away." Margaret remained steadfastly by his side through every moment. She had observed the boys ever since Hannah became too frail to rise from her bed. She had washed them, shared stories with them, and responded to unanswerable queries with a serene spirit. As she conversed with the caseworker, she remarked, "He's not perfect, yet he arrives. And I've come to understand that's the starting point of fatherhood." There were obstacles, setbacks, appeals for further background investigations and additional judicial proceedings. Yet Nicholas remained unyielding. For the very first time, he found himself without a plan to escape. He endured the clamor, navigated the documents, and faced the sleepless nights, all while waiting for someone else to determine if he was worthy of the father he was already evolving into. With each passing day, his presence became more pronounced. He mastered the art of braiding Leo's hair after Leo insisted on growing it out to resemble a cartoon character. He discovered that Lucas enjoyed drifting off to the soothing sounds of science podcasts. He found out that Logan despised thunderstorms, unless there was someone present to count the seconds between the lightning and the thunder alongside him. Nicholas began to respond to emails less frequently. He ceased his morning ritual of checking stock prices. He exchanged business calls for the soothing rhythm of bedtime routines. In the gentle hush of late afternoons, where homework mingled with spilled juice and laughter echoed too loudly for a man who once despised noise, Nicholas came to understand that he was not merely fixing what was broken. He was crafting something wholly original, something that held greater significance than power ever could, something genuine. On a Thursday afternoon, the threads of reality began to come undone. Nicholas had assured the boys that he would personally collect them from school that day. It may have seemed trivial in the larger context of his corporate existence, yet for them it held immense significance. Leo had even inquired about stopping for ice cream afterward, and Nicholas, still discovering the art of embracing small, joyful moments, had readily agreed. But then the call arrived. A senior partner at the company had erred in a significant international contract, putting a billion-dollar deal with a foreign investor at risk. The legal team was in a frenzy, the board was in disarray, and his assistant was urgently imploring him to arrive at once. Nicholas paused for a brief moment, less than 5 seconds, before instructing the driver to alter their route. He reassured himself that his absence would last no more than 20 minutes. No more than 30. It was not a duration of 30 minutes. The duration was 3 hours. As he arrived at the school, the sun dipped below the horizon, leaving the boys long gone. A teacher told him that they had been waiting outside for almost an hour before someone from the shelter was reached out to come and get them. She attempted to maintain a neutral tone, yet Nicholas could sense the disappointment lurking beneath her composed facade. He expressed his gratitude and departed swiftly, a heaviness in his chest. He chose not to return to the office. He ceased to respond to any further calls. Instead, he headed directly to the shelter, his mind racing with a myriad of apologies he was ready to express. However, the boys were absent. With a furrowed brow, Margaret gazed at him, her voice laced with worry as she recounted the moment the volunteer showed up at the school, revealing that Lucas was the sole one there to greet them. The other two had drifted away, with Leo firmly asserting that if their dad couldn't be bothered to show up, they would seek out another place to be. It struck Nicholas with a force he hadn't anticipated. It wasn't merely his failure that stung, but rather the manner in which they had reacted. As if it was unexpected. As if they had always anticipated his departure would come in due time. Late that night, they discovered them at the old apartment where they once shared moments with Hannah. The structure stood largely abandoned, yet the boys had managed to slip inside regardless. They were equipped with blankets, a flashlight, and a bag of snacks. Upon Nicholas's arrival, there were no tears or shouts. Leo merely glanced at him and remarked, "I told you so," We ought to have been more cautious with our trust in him. Nicholas made no effort to defend himself. He refrained from discussing crises, obligations, or unexpected calamities. He settled onto the dusty floor, his designer suit contrasting sharply with the surroundings, and confessed, "I messed up. Today I found myself making an unfortunate decision. I truly despise that it led you to believe you are insignificant because you are not. Above all else." The boys remained silent at first. Lucas rested against his side in silence, weariness lingering from the long day. Logan gazed at the flashlight as if it contained the secrets he had yet to uncover in Nicholas's words. Leo sat opposite him, arms folded, his gaze inscrutable. "Perfection isn't what I'm looking for," Leo finally stated. "However, your presence is essential to me, even when it's not ideal." Nicholas gave a slight nod. "I aspire to be. I shall be, regardless of the price." That night he brought them home, choosing his own place over the shelter. He prepared grilled cheese for them, the sole dish he could manage without oversight. They dined on the floor before the television, cocooned in blankets, exchanging few words, yet remaining rooted in place. As they drifted into slumber, Nicholas lingered in the hallway, observing the gentle rise and fall of their tiny forms, breathing together in harmony. In that moment, he realized that the matter at hand transcended custody hearings and the need to demonstrate stability to the court. This was about being present in the unplanned and unscheduled moments. The following morning, he convened an urgent board meeting. Despite his assistant's attempts to dissuade him, he remained steadfast in his decision. He faced a gathering of individuals clad in sharp suits and announced his decision to step back. Not relinquishing control, not abandoning the realm he had constructed, but rather taking a step back. He would no longer trade away the people he cherished for the organization that had already consumed too much of his existence. The board was left in disbelief. There was a palpable sense of anger among some individuals. Others are perplexed. Yet Nicholas remained unperturbed. For the first time in years, he was free from the constraints of shareholders and profits in his decision-making. He crafted them inspired by 3 little boys who had once lingered outside his building, resembling his own reflection. That day, he returned home earlier than he typically would, arriving just in time to collect the boys from school. He arrived 20 minutes ahead of schedule. Following that night, everything began to change in ways Nicholas had never anticipated. The change was subtle, lacking any grand spectacle. There were no cinematic sequences showcasing the flawless transition into fatherhood. Yet, the transformation was genuine, gradual, and deeply embedded in the everyday, chaotic cadence of life. He began rising before the boys, not due to a meeting, but out of a desire to be the one to prepare breakfast. It was always something straightforward. Scrambled eggs that tended to be a bit overdone, pancakes with edges that weren't quite perfect, toast that occasionally turned a shade too dark. But the boys were unfazed. They arrived at the table in a delightful array of mismatched pajamas, hair tousled, eyes still heavy with sleep, and they devoured their meal as if it were a grand banquet. At times, they would even share a laugh. He dedicated 2 days each week to completely disconnect from work calls. His team swiftly realized that unless the building was truly ablaze, they were not to interrupt him. On those days, he personally collected the boys from school, standing outside the gates like any other parent, attempting to appear nonchalant despite often feeling like a fraud. Yet, as the boys caught sight of him and rushed forward, exclaiming "Dad," as if it were the most instinctive term imaginable, all traces of unease dissipated. Those moments transformed something profound within him. As darkness fell, they crafted a fresh ritual. Bath time unfolded in a whirlwind of commotion, rife with disputes over the coveted blue towel and the last remnants of shampoo. Later, they nestled together on the spacious couch, wrapped in a single blanket as Nicholas brought stories to life, predominantly tales of fantasy filled with dragons, portals, and courageous children who saved the world. At times, they would pause every couple of pages to pose questions or invent their own conclusions. At times, they simply absorbed his words, their heads resting gently against his arms, gradually succumbing to slumber, one after another. He remained alert long after they drifted off, simply sitting there, allowing the silence to envelop the space in a manner that felt comforting rather than hollow. He signed them up for various activities. Art classes for Lucas, who was always lost in his doodles. Soccer for Leo, who struggled to stay still for even 10 minutes. And music lessons for Logan, who, though quiet, had an impeccable sense of rhythm in his hands. Nicholas attended each and every recital, every game, and every open house without fail. He was indifferent to the number of meetings he needed to rearrange. Each time he arrived and witnessed their expressions brighten simply at the thought of his presence. It brought back to him the very reason behind his efforts. There were challenging moments as well. Moments when Logan withdrew into silence, choosing not to engage with anyone. Evenings when Lucas was haunted by nightmares, unable to drift back into slumber unless he rested upon Nicholas's chest. There were mornings when Leo would lash out unexpectedly, only to retreat to the bathroom afterward, tears streaming down his face in solitude. Every single time Nicholas remained, he refrained from addressing it through financial means or quick fixes. He took a seat among them. He inquired. He discovered the moments to pause and the times to grip even more firmly. One evening, after all three had settled in for the night, he discovered himself standing alone on the back porch of their rented house. He gazed at the stars, his mind drifting to thoughts of Hannah. He pondered whether she had experienced this identical burden, this blend of intense affection and daunting obligation. He reflected on the letter she had penned and the trust she had placed in him, despite the miles that separated them. He wished, somehow, she could perceive them now, that she was aware her boys were secure, adored. In giving him more than just children, she had bestowed upon him a sense of purpose. That night, he arrived at a conclusion, something enduring, something genuine. The following morning, he reached out to his lawyer and began the process of legally adopting all three boys. They belonged to him in every significant sense, yet he yearned for them to understand, without a doubt, that they would never be abandoned again. He held back the news for a while. He bided his time until the forms received the necessary approval, until the moment they could step into the courtroom side by side, and a judge could declare what Nicholas already sensed deep within him, that they were his sons. On that day, he found himself in a room crowded with unfamiliar faces, gazing down at the three boys grasping his hands, dressed in tiny suits and sporting anxious smiles. In that moment, he understood that he had never experienced such unwavering certainty about anything before. When the judge inquired whether he grasped the weight of the responsibility, whether he embraced them as his children not merely in name but in spirit, Nicholas responded without a moment's pause. I already engage in that activity. The adoption transformed everything, yet paradoxically, it altered nothing whatsoever. There was no significant change in their everyday existence, no striking transformation in their manner of speaking or interacting with one another, yet an unexpressed understanding had taken root. The boys started to unwind in fresh manners. The underlying tension that occasionally hovered beneath their laughter began to fade away. They no longer looked askance when Nicholas arrived home late or hesitated to call out, "Dad," as if the word might vanish if spoken too forcefully. It belonged to them now. Their connection to that word was as strong as his, and none of them dared to question it any longer. Nicholas, in that moment, sensed a fresh weight of obligation take root within him. The burden wasn't about financial risk or the intricacies of corporate decision-making. This was an experience that transcended mere obligation, grounded instead in a profound sense of commitment. He started to envision their futures rather than focusing solely on financial gains. He ceased to envision success through the lens of quarterly growth and began to visualize school plays, scraped knees, broken science projects, and inquiries about girls. He understood that the toughest challenges still lay ahead. For the first time in his life, he felt a deep desire to be present for each moment, whether joyful or challenging. Shortly thereafter, they settled into a home on the outskirts of the city. Nothing grand, nothing showy. It's a charming two-story home featuring a spacious backyard, a delightful wraparound porch, and a beloved dog they adopted after much persuasion from the three boys. The neighborhood exuded a serene atmosphere, populated by families that Nicholas once believed he could never truly comprehend. He greeted his neighbors with a friendly wave and took on the role of assistant coach for Leo's soccer team during the weekends, despite not being fully versed in all the rules of the game. Weekends transformed into something sacred. Saturdays unfolded with the delightful aroma of pancakes, accompanied by the charm of cartoons, and the leisurely embrace of afternoons filled with books and board games scattered across the living room floor. Sundays were reserved for strolls through the nearby woods, where Logan would gather rocks in his backpack, while Lucas attempted to identify the birds they encountered along the way. Nicholas had shed the weight of dread that once accompanied his Monday mornings. Amidst the whirlwind of school drop-offs and the clash of mismatched socks, a profound sense of tranquility enveloped him in this moment. He began to maintain a journal, a practice he had abandoned since his college days. Not for corporate tactics or aspirations ahead, but for reflections he wished to preserve. What the boys mentioned, inquiries they posed, the way Logan instinctively leaned into him while they were watching a movie. The sound Leo made when he laughed too hard was a delightful snort. Lucas had a remarkable habit of ensuring that everyone else was equipped with a fork before he took his first bite. These were the moments that Nicholas yearned to hold on to. These were the moments he dreaded having overlooked far too often. One evening, Leo inquired about the whereabouts of their mom after she had passed away. Nicholas paused, not due to uncertainty in his response, but because he aimed to convey his thoughts in a manner that would resonate with a 6-year-old's heart. He led them all outside, reclined on the grass alongside them, and gestured towards the stars above. "I'm not entirely sure," he murmured softly, "yet I believe she exists out there in the world, observing you, immensely proud of you, adoring you, a bit from a greater distance." Lucas murmured, "Do you believe she notices us at this moment?" "I do," Nicholas said. "Seems like she's always on the go." They lay there in silence, under the shadows of the night sky, and Nicholas pondered the peculiarities of life. How something as immense as grief could transform into a gentle presence. How something so unforeseen as fatherhood could transform into the most instinctive role he had ever embraced. Later that night, Logan placed a small note on Nicholas's nightstand, the handwriting revealing a certain tremor and inconsistency. "We appreciate your choice in selecting us." Nicholas gazed at it intently, his throat constricted, his heart unwavering. In that moment he required nothing more, no accolades, no achievements, no recognition or cheers. Only that sentence. A small truth delicately tucked away in a piece of paper, serving as a reminder of all that was significant. Summer came softly, like a whispered vow. The trees that lined their street were in full bloom, the backyard alive with the hum of bees and the gentle rustle of wind through vibrant leaves. The boys embraced every moment outdoors, their bare feet sinking into the grass, laughter mingling with the refreshing spray of the sprinkler. Nicholas had never experienced affection for a season before. He had never truly observed one. Before them, years drifted by like tedious gatherings, methodically, devoid of vibrancy, without interruption. Yet, he measured the passage of time by the freckles dotting their noses, the height marks etched on the kitchen wall, the moment Lucas began to read chapter books independently, and the day Logan learned to tie his own shoes without assistance. Even Leo, who had once folded his arms and declared his distrust for anyone in a suit, now turned to Nicholas for help in constructing forts from old sheets and couch cushions, simply because he enjoyed their time spent together in the process. Their conversations no longer touched on court dates. There was no necessity for them to do so. The adoption was complete, the documents signed, the new birth certificate submitted. Yet the reality of it had already taken root long before the judge's pen touched the paper. They were kin, authentic, unwavering in conviction. With the weight of uncertainty lifted from their lives, Nicholas turned his attention to creating something that transcended mere safety. He aspired to create happiness. In July, they embarked on their first genuine vacation, journeying upstate to a cabin by a serene lake, completely devoid of internet, reception, and any distractions. The boys initially harbored doubts. Without games, cartoons, or delivery pizza. Yet, in just a day, they found themselves chasing frogs, capturing fireflies in jars, and drifting off to sleep beneath wool blankets, their hair infused with the scent of smoke from the campfire. Nicholas prepared each dish alongside them. He assisted them in etching their names into the wooden railing of the porch, and although he never confessed it, a few tears escaped when he noticed Dad inscribed alongside their initials. It was chaotic and uneven, marked by a simple stick, yet it held more significance than any structure he had ever possessed. One night, the heavens unveiled a tapestry of stars, more vivid than anything visible in the city, as the four of them lingered on the dock in quietude, their feet suspended above the shadowy water. Leo inquired whether individuals truly transformed into stars upon their passing. Nicholas may not have had a flawless response, but he suggested that if someone did, your mom likely had the most brilliant one. Logan gestured towards the sky, selecting one at random, and softly murmured, "Hi, Mom," as if sharing a cherished secret meant only for her ears. Nicholas wrapped his arm around them, remaining still, allowing the silence to linger. Upon their return home, they nestled a cherry blossom tree in the backyard, its soft pink petals dancing with a wild grace. Lucas proposed the idea, suggesting it might serve as a way to honor Hannah's memory. Nicholas assisted them in their digging efforts, undeterred by the resistance of the earth. As the tree was finally positioned upright and the soil firmly settled around it, a sense of calm washed over him, filling his chest. It lacked resolution. It was an ongoing journey, a presence to serve as a reminder that existence continues beyond the end. It expanded into uncharted territories. Classes have started again. Schedules have been returned. Yet now everything seemed transformed. Nicholas embraced early mornings and the whirlwind of 3 backpacks and overlooked lunchboxes. He appreciated the chaos, the clamor, the flaws of their small world. His residence, previously a serene space characterized by clean lines and tranquility, had transformed into a vibrant chaos filled with crayon art, soccer shoes, and unfinished science projects scattered across the kitchen counter. In that moment, he experienced a pride unlike any other. On an ordinary Wednesday evening, as they savored their spaghetti and debated who had the greater share of meatballs, Nicholas paused and simply observed them. Initially, it went unnoticed by everyone. They were caught up in laughter, playfully teasing one another, engaging in conversation with their mouths full. Eventually, Lucas caught his eye and inquired, "What?" Nicholas inclined his head with a deliberate, measured motion. Silence. I never imagined life could unfold in such a way." With a playful smirk, Leo leaned in closer. "Are you referring to chaotic, vibrant, and incredible?" Nicholas gave a slight nod. "Precisely that." That night, once the house was quiet and everyone had drifted off to sleep, he quietly made his way to the porch, cradling a warm cup of tea, and gazed up at the familiar sky they had admired together at the lake. Somewhere above, beyond the reach of his gaze, he wished that Hannah could see them. He wished she understood that he had honored his commitment, even if it remained unspoken. He had not turned his back. He remained. Not exactly. Imperfections are inevitable. However, entirely. He retrieved his phone, navigated to the Notes app where he stored his collection of quotes and reminders, and crafted a solitary sentence. "This is the legacy I desire. 3 boys who will never question their worthiness of love." He set the phone aside, inhaled the warm summer air deeply, and stepped back indoors. For the very first time, Nicholas Rains experienced a sense of completeness he had never known before. From a narrative standpoint, the conclusion of this tale felt both fulfilling and essential. It started with a man who appeared to possess it all: wealth, power, and a solid reputation. Yet he was devoid of the one element he was unaware he needed: connection. Observing Nicholas evolve from a remote, high-achieving executive into an engaged, emotionally attuned father was not merely touching. It served as a poignant reminder that genuine legacy is not forged in corporate offices or towering structures, but rather in the moments of bedtime tales, in the aroma of charred toast at breakfast, and in the commitments honored when no one else is watching. The boys didn't merely discover a father. They played a pivotal role in helping a man rediscover his humanity. That is the sort of conclusion that lingers in your mind. Calm, authentic, and vibrant.